Project managers everywhere have a big task of working with teams. For that reason, team member roles and dynamics becomes very important. In John Maxwell's book, The 17 Essential Qualities of a Team Player, he covers these 17 qualities that team players should have, which are adaptable, collaborative, committed, communicative, competent, dependable, disciplined, enlarging, enthusiastic, intentional, mission conscious, prepared, relational, self improving, selfless, and solution oriented. And those are brilliant, brilliant qualities. But going beyond qualities of a team, let's dive into team member roles. And team member roles is a topic that has been studied and researched by a gentleman known as Dr. Meredith Belbin. He started off his research over 40 years ago at Cambridge, and he has since then presented to us a concept that is often referred to as team member roles. When you ask students and project managers, do roles really matter? People will tell you they do, because everyone needs to be in their position, doing their best. However, if roles are not properly defined and teams are not properly crafted with intentionality in some sort of masterminding fashion by a mastermind, then it becomes a free for all. And that's why this model espoused by Meredith Belbin becomes very relevant to us as students of leadership and students of project management, because these team member dynamics are visible across teams, both for good and bad. So I first of all read out what John Maxwell had crafted together to give you an idea of what great qualities look like. But not every team member has those qualities. They may have some qualities from that list, but they may have others that are not absolutely desirable. So in this study, we are going to break apart Dr. Meredith Belbin's model for team member roles. So let me start off by giving you a very easy way of remembering what exactly he has presented to us. He has presented to us various ideas, various overarching ideas. For example, to take his words, he says, when people work in effective combinations, they achieve so much more. How profound. You could have people working in ineffective combinations and not gaining as much. But when you know how to position people, when you do it well with intentionality, with thought, you get further ahead. Okay. So in taking a look at this model, we have three groups that he has categorized these 9 roles into. And I want to present them to you in such a way that you will not forget these groups. So I want you to think about these groups in this fashion. A, which is for action, action-oriented. The next group is person, if you will, oriented. And these are often called people-oriented roles. And then the last group is thought-oriented. Beg your pardon. Okay. So if you remember that this is an apt model for teams, you will remember these categories. Just remember the word apt. Now, let's begin to dive into these one by one. First of all, under action-oriented roles, we have these behaviors. You've got to remember these are behaviors. These are not personalities. These are behaviors, and these behaviors are somewhat visible in these descriptions, or the people that would fit into some of these behavioral descriptions. It is important to remember that this is not personality. I am very big on reminding people that we should not rely on personality typing. That is a much wider topic, and it needs to be handled very sensitively and carefully. So I do not subscribe to personality typing or theories from that school. What I do subscribe to, though, is behavior. Because as Rick Brinkman says in his book, Dealing with People You Can't Stand, behavior is fluid and dynamic and is always changing. Personality is a whole different ballgame. This is not personality. So let's talk about the A section, action-oriented. Now, we have 3, and the acronym that you can remember is SICK. We have 1, the shaper. The shaper whips people into shape. And when you think about the shaper, this person is very dynamic, passionate. They've got that extrovert thing going on in this behavioral setting. And you need to remember that someone who is a shaper could be something else on a different team. Because I believe that people's roles on teams change as they move from team to team. So someone who is a shaper may not be a shaper everywhere. They may be a shaper predominantly, but they may not be a shaper everywhere. The shaper thrives on pressure, and they're prone to provocation, and they could hurt other team members with their sharp tongue. Okay, so that's one role that we see on teams. Someone who has drive, is trying to get stuff done. My friend, Dr. Rick Brinkman, he talks about the tank in his book, Dealing with People You Can't Stand. The tank will grind you down. Tread will grind and you will be ground. And with the tank, it's nothing personal. It's just that work has to be done. That's very similar to the shaper. Okay? They thrive on pressure. They're extroverts. They've got strong interpersonal communication skills, but they can be provoked and they could hurt other people's feelings. The next one is the implementer. What is an implementer? An implementer is someone, of course, who implements. What do they implement? Well, they take ideas that people have, and they craft them into actionable steps. They craft them into plans. They can be conservative. They can be, behavior-wise, rigid in many situations, and they can be slow to accept change. From the world of project management, think about someone who thinks fully plan-driven and may not want to deviate into an agile mindset. Okay, remember these are behaviors. Now, as I tell you these are behaviors, I want you to remember that these do not have to be totally set. Change is always a potential concept here. In fact, Dr. Belbin does say that we can change. Okay, we can change. So when we talk about these behaviors, we're not saying that you're totally set and that's it and you cannot deviate from it. Okay, the last one here that we have under the action column here, we call this one the completer. Let's make this a bit bigger. The completer. Yeah, actually two words. Completer, finisher. See that? Completer, finisher. Now, the completer finishers have a keen eye for detail. They are very, very meticulous. Not only do they believe in completing a project, they believe in completing that project good, like really well. They're detail oriented, they're painstaking, and they strive for perfection. Now, the only problem with this is they may want to do everything by themselves. You see, they may be kind of people that don't like to delegate. Now, with that, we jump ahead to put some pros and cons of these behaviors. We have pros and we have cons. So, thinking about the shaper, what is a pro of a shaper? What is one of the good things about a shaper? Well, one of the good things about a shaper is that work actually get done. You see, they are driven, so they got drive, they bring about movement, and another thing about these folks is they actually thrive on obstacles. So they've got a no obstacle mindset. No obstacle is too big. They've got a bring it on mindset. You see what I mean? What are the cons? They could be sharp tongued, and they could be insensitive to others, you see, and they could be a little bit argumentative. They could be a bit bossy as well, to put it mildly. Let's talk about the implementer. What is the good thing about the implementer? Well, they are very organized. Remember, they take ideas and they craft plans and actions from those ideas. So these are the folks who will make very good planners. They are organized. They are disciplined. But on the flip side, they can be a little bit rigid and resistant to change. So they could be rigid and they could resist change. Okay. As a tip for those of you who listen at an alarmingly fast speed, you could always speed this up, because I'm talking very slow so that those who are new to this concept can follow along and take notes. But if you're watching this on a platform where you can hit the times 1.5 or times 2 even for some of you, you might want to consider that. Okay. Finally, let's talk about the pros and cons of the completer finisher. One of the great things about these folks is they are detail oriented. That is a very, very good quality. Detail oriented. They don't let stuff get away. They are concerned with deadlines, they're deadline oriented, and they ensure that stuff is done at the right time. A Completa finisher is painstaking and conscientious, and they strive to perfection. These folks would be very good quality managers. So I don't know if you've caught me just giving you some inkling as to what kind of roles these folks could play on a team. You know, like a Completa finisher who is a tester would be an asset to a team that's trying to knock stuff out, trying to knock out a release, and at the same time trying to make sure it's done well. You see? But talking about the Completa finisher, what is one of the downsides of the Completa finisher? In their strive for perfection, they are reluctant to delegate in many instances. They do not believe you're going to get it done well. And let's just be honest, I used to be in this category. And as we go through this, you'll find that you have a little bit of every one of these qualities in different settings. In different settings. You know, in some settings, I could kick back and do very, very little shaping. And in some instances, I am the shaper. In other instances, I am the finisher. I mean, like if you're talking about some project management, program management related endeavor, I could very well become a Completa finisher. Whereas in other settings, I could become an implementer, you see. So what Mr. Belbin is saying is not that we are one of these and nothing else. No, that's not what he's saying. All right. So I hope you caught that first group there, action. Now, when we think about these groups, we are bound to see a bit of ourselves, and we're also bound to see others. So when I look at shaper, I see qualities that have been described about leaders we know. For example, Steve Jobs is definitely one. Shaper comes to mind. And if you know enough and have read enough about Steve, you also see the Completa finisher. My goodness. Talk about a situation where he decided to redo the tiles in the bathroom of one of Apple's facilities, not just once, but more than once. Like rip out all the tiles, do it again because one tile was out of place. I mean, that is definitely a Completa finisher quality right there, coupled with many, many other stories about Steve. But anyway, that's it for the action group. Let's move into the next one, the people. And again, there is a way you can remember what this is, because people is right here sandwiched in between action and thought. Thought, action, people in the middle. So this is the center. You see that it's in the center of both. So my own way of presenting this is different from the way other people teach it, because I'm trying to put a mnemonic in place for you to remember it. So I deliberately present it to you with the APT and the SIC for action, and you're going to see CTR for people. And you got to remember CTR is center. It's in the center. All right. So let's talk about these people-oriented roles. People-oriented roles, the touchy-feely type roles, they are very important. for teams to thrive. I know a lot of times we just want to get the work done, but these are people who help the work get done better. So let's talk about them one by one. The first one is a role we call the coordinator. Coordinator. And I'm just going to go straight to talking about the pros of the coordinator. Now you know how I'm rolling with this. So let's talk about the coordinator. The coordinator has you could call it classic team member role. They are confident, they're mature. You could call them exemplary listeners. I'm talking about active listening. These are the people who could very well exemplify that. They guide the team to what you could say are the goals on the project. And they're able to see value that team members bring to the table. You could say they have a PMA, a positive mental attitude. Now, while that is good, having a PMA and while seeing the good in everyone, seeing good and strength in everyone, and while being objective, they got to make sure that they're not too objective, because one of the things they could do is they could delegate to a fault. Now, there's nothing wrong in delegating, but you don't want them to delegate away what they should do. So it may sound a little bit strange, but delegate to a fault. And that is one of the things that comes out regarding the coordinator. You got to remember that in project management, when we use the word or the term coordinator, it is often used in a lower capacity for job description. This is not job description, this is role. So when we talk about coordinator, you got to remember we're not talking about a job. We're talking about a role someone plays. In a team of C-level executives, you could have one who is a coordinator. I've seen it happen. You could have one who is a completer finisher. You could have one who is an implementer. So these roles, you got to remember, they're not job titles, okay? Because you might see yourself in the coordinator and wonder, oh, but the coordinators typically assist the, no, this is not job, okay? In some instances, unfortunately, the poor coordinator may be perceived as being manipulative, a plotter, and they actually could escape doing their own fair share of the work. They may actually steer the team to goals that they want instead of what should really be. And, they may not be doing this in a malicious way. It's just what happens with these folks. Remember, again, I really want to stress that this is not personality typing. Okay? Because if you think that this is how they are all the time, you are missing the point. Teams are grouped together in different situations for different things, and these behaviors are triggered by various needs on the project, various actions. I like the way Dr. Belbin put it. He says, choose the best role for you. And then he says, not every team needs 9 of these roles that we're going to be looking at. Some teams may need just 4 or 5 or 6, but you don't need every single role. Another question that was asked when during an interview was, what do you think about this being applicable to other nations, specifically those that rely on command and control and draconian rule? And he said flat out that there are going to be some instances where teamwork is looked at as a threat. And in those circumstances, a totally different model of command and control may very well be what fits that government or that team for the time, or that collection of people, I should say, for the time. So just keep all these things in mind. Um, when it comes to people, I do not believe in rigidity, and I do not believe in personality typing and fixing people down, pegging people down. No, we're talking about roles. Okay. All right. Let's go to the next one. So the next one is the team worker. Team worker. What is a team worker? Team worker, you could say they are a unifier. They unify everyone. They are the unifying force on the team. They help to resolve conflicts or issues. They help create a healthy team dynamic. Positive mental attitude, again, good morale, and they're usually popular. So positive mental attitude, and you could say conflict resolve. Those kind of people. They are perceptive, they're tactful, they've got this team slant, this intuition thing. However, at times when they need to make decisions because they are trying to avoid conflict, because they're peacemakers, sometimes they're indecisive. You know, they are not that manager that will tell it to you like it is. They may almost seem to be, in some instances, a little bit politically inclined, not to their benefit, but really because they're trying to be in the middle, they're balanced. You know, like people describe politicians as not wanting to rock the boat, playing politics, you know, avoiding confrontation, whatever you want to call it. These folks are that, okay? Not under every single circumstance, but don't be surprised if you see it. So we could say they are confrontation averse. Okay. All right. And the last one that we have here is a really important one. We call this person a resource investigator. A resource investigator in the wider world of management, I would call this person on an organizational level a boundary spanner. Resource investigator. And a boundary spanner is a networker, is a curious networker, is someone who seeks to know more by research, covert or overt, and they got great networking skills. They're usually extroverts and they're easily relatable, and they can interact with other team members. They've got many contacts, people that they have networked with, and they just have a wide span, an array of possibilities when it comes to resource staffing time. They're comfortable exploring opportunities and communicating, and they have the ability to negotiate well for team members. So they've got a lot of good strengths going on. They can negotiate, they are networkers, you know, and they are also curious. So, I mean, these folks could wear many hats. And like I said, they are very comfortable exploring opportunities. However, they can be a little bit too optimistic. And they can be hot and heavy in the beginning, and that could all go away in a blink of an eye. It could wane once the initial buzz has passed. So they could get bored once the initial fire has died down. Okay, so far we've talked about the action and the people-oriented roles. Let's talk about the final role group here, and that is thought-oriented roles. Now, the first group here, sick. Second group, CTO. Third group, if you are a project manager, project management requires a lot of thought, a lot of organization, but a lot of thought. So you need a project management system to get your stuff done. So just remember that. Thought, project management system. So I've shown you a bunch of mnemonics, and I'm hoping that this helps it stick for those of you who would like it to stick better. So apt, APT, sick, center, right there in the center, and project management systems require thought. People are always in the center of the project. Okay, just remember that. Good. So let's talk about our final three, and I will make this a lot quicker now. So this has a very interesting name. This first one, we call this the plant. And the plant is a thinker. The plant is typically an introvert, someone who could be zoned out into their own thoughts. These are the people who come up with ideas. These are the ideas people. And of course, when you think about ideas, you think about innovation as well. And I hope you see the overlap here, because I talked about Steve as a shaper, Steve Jobs as a shaper, and then I'm talking about Steve Jobs as a plant in the same token, an ideas person, you know, and he played so many roles. You know, when you look at the tapestry of the whole thing, by the time we're done, you might also see that a well-rounded leader has got pieces from all of these categories. So while we look for team members' strengths, you might find that a leader has got many of these, maybe 4, 5, 6, maybe even 8 or 9 of these categories in different measures. And what makes the leader a great leader is being able to bridle the negative, the cons. And I really want to stress that. We're not saying that every shaper is this. We're saying it is a tendency. We're not saying every implementer is this. No. But we're saying look out for those cons. You want to avoid them. You want to minimize those effects. Okay. So that's your plant. Your plant, like I said, is the idea people, but one of the downsides, just one, there are others, but I'm focusing on some of the major ones. One of the downsides is they are poor receivers of criticism. They do not take criticism very well. And not just positive. I'm not talking about positive. I'm talking about criticism that could be perceived as negative. even though it could just be criticism. They may see a negative bend towards it. Also, these plants are not great communicators. So while they got great ideas, they may not be great communicators. And in the same token, you could have plants that are awesome communicators because they've been made aware of it and they know how to bridle it and they've worked on themselves. That's the whole idea. Okay. So, like I said, ideas, and these are your innovators. Steve Jobs says, innovation distinguishes a leader from a follower. So that's a good trait. What does the M stand for? Monitor, evaluator. What is a monitor evaluator? A monitor evaluator is a critical thinker, very strategic. And you need people like this on your group. These are the people who help you think before jumping into action. They may really give it a good thought and consequently be slow to act. So you could say they lack drive and they're so critical in their thinking that they may end up being critical of other team members, overtly critical. Overly critical of other team members. And just knowing these behaviors, and trying to stay out of these landmines is going to help your team. You see, that's why we learn this stuff, so that we can stay out of the landmines. All right. Last but not least, final one here is the specialist. And because the specialist is only good at one thing majorly, they're great at their specialism. They're great at their specialism. Okay, you could say that they are indispensable. They're great. However, they may get bogged down by the technical babble, and other people might be lost. They might be technically bogged down because remember, they are specialists. It's like, I just use myself as an example. I went out to train a firm and we were talking about project management concepts, and there was a particular concept I was talking about in the project management body of knowledge guide terms. And the language, of course, was a little bit viscous and dense. And someone just came along and said, oh, is it this? And it was like 3 words or 4 words that didn't need a whole boatload of others. I was so bogged down with the technical jargon that I had not realized what was being said in the PMBOK guide could have been said in so few words. Of course, I quickly corrected what I was saying using a much easier way of presenting it. So anyway, my friends, that is it about the team member roles. There are many resources. Belbin has a website you can check out for more information. But in closing, just remember, not every team needs all 9. Remember that in regimes where there is hierarchy, this could be perceived as a threat. Remember that teams will achieve so much more if they're in the right combinations, if they're in the right place at the right time as a team member. And just remember, use your strength to the best of your advantage. Apt, sick, center, and project management system requires thought. People are in the middle. Okay? A, P, T. I hope this helps you remember it, and I hope this helps you grasp the concepts better. Take care, and bye for now.